Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope I find you all well. Thank you so much for your patience. I found my microphone, so we are good to go. Hopefully the sound will be better. I have been away because we still have no internet in the house, so it's relying on uploads from my phone, which is fine, but sometimes it takes ages and it's a little bit stressed. Sometimes it doesn't work. So, yes, I'm having to try and remember to look at the actual camera than opposed to straight on, because otherwise it just looks like I'm looking off. So, I'm trying, guys. So, I thought I would come back and do another chapter of Like Lambs to the Slaughter, Your Child and the Occult. The other chapters to this are on this in playlists, so please go find them if you want to watch them. And also, I would like to know before I get into it, and I will put this on a separate video, but in case you don't see that, I'll leave the note on here. If people would like to see videos of like me cooking and gardening and just doing those kind of things, so let me know how you feel about that, because I would like to always keep reading. That's what I want to do. But I have got Most Highly Guided Home and Garden, I think it's called, another channel that I would possibly keep things separate on, and do the filming on there of the cooking, and because I make a lot of things from scratch. So yeah, if this is something that you think would be great, then yeah, drop me a comment below, guys. That would be lovely to hear from you and what you think. So we are on chapter 3, Your Teacher and the Occultist. Like I said, if you want to watch if you want to watch or hear the other chapter that I've read of this book, then please go find the playlist, and they're all on there. All books are on playlists, so you can just listen your way through. So, Your Teacher and the Occultist. For too long, schools have been containers holding places for keeping the young off the streets and out of the labour market. In the new age, they shall, I hope, be temples where human beings are nurtured into the recognition and application of their divinity. This is Warlene James' Handbook for Educating in the New Age. Imagine, if you will, a place where you can learn astrology, yoga, numerology, the basics of colour healing and ESP. A place where you are led into guided imagery, fantasy trips, and visualization techniques that help you contact your higher self and your spirit guide. A place where meditation seasons are regularly conducted to teach you to look within yourself for the solution to all problems. A place where you learn chants and affirmations which assure you that you are a perfect person and student. Imagine a setting where you can learn how to open your chakras and raise the Kundalini force, or how to draw mandalas, interpret your dreams, and astral project. No, you have not been reading a syllabus for a seminar at your local ashram or occult center. These practices, along with endless variations on the theme, were indeed once relegated to the misty abodes of shamans, yogis, wizards, witches, magicians, mediums, witch doctors, and other assorted occultists. Today, however, in more enlightened times, they have become the rage in vogue in public schools in every state and in virtually every community around the country. The news shouldn't come as any major shock, since these practices have always been going on for the last 15 to 20 years now. All the teachers are doing is applying the latest innovations in the field of psychology to their classrooms. I believe that the majority of the teachers who are using the latest psychological as well as Eastern occultic techniques in their classrooms are doing so in ignorance of what they are actually involved with. Many of them find themselves unexpectedly exposed to the occult through the psychological methodologies used during in-service training sessions. One distraught Christian public school teacher from California wrote and told me that in recent left brain, right brain in-service session in Pasadena, they were presented with a material on yoga, meditation, holistic education, centering, altering states of consciousness, wise persons, spirit guides, etc. This is rapidly becoming the norm. The compassionate teacher. Not long ago, a young teacher in Portland, Oregon, was one of 13 educators specially selected to go on a 3-day seminar called School Within a School. After arriving at the seminar ground, she discovered that the program was designed to help them become better teachers by showing them how to lead the children on guided imagery visualization trips, how to build a psychic room, how to contact their spirit guides, how to read auras, how to conduct out of body experiences. Of course, the teachers were led in these techniques themselves so they could experience firsthand the wonders into which they would be leading their children. Fortunately, this teacher, a committed and knowledgeable Christian, was familiar with the occult religious nature of these activities, and she refused to participate in them. Education courses in growing number of universities around the country are offering young teachers courses with titles such as Imagineering Tools for Unlocking Potential. This course, offered at a California State University at Long Beach in spring 1984, was advertised this way: learn to use Imagineering skills, so visualization and guided imagery, in your classroom to accelerate achievement and facilitate learning. These tools can help you unlock creativity, solve problems, identify behavioral patterns, and expand student potential. This experiential workshop is designed to enable you to lead others in new and dramatic ways. Imagineering skills can become a most valuable resource in your effective learning toolkit. What young or burned out teacher could resist that? Western Washington University, like so many other universities, has become quite open about its commitment to indoctrinating the future teachers of this country in the New Age, globalist, socialist, and Eastern mystical perspective. Professor Philip van der Velde's course entitled Foundation of Education is a globalist New Age classic. His key textbooks are Global Mandate, Pedagogy for Peace, Pedagogy for Peace. I don't know how that's pronounced. Sorry, guys. Sometimes the words are just like, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Edited by himself and Young Chan Kim, and a book by physicist and New Ager Fritjof Capra entitled The Turning Point. Capra's book tells apprentice teachers that the crusades of Christian fundamentalists are promoting medieval notions of reality. He would prefer to see our society's cultural values and attitudes based on the framework that is developed in great detail in the I Ching, that lies at the very basis of Chinese thought. The I Ching, by the way, is an ancient system of divination. He is also sympathetic to the cause of the feminist spirituality and worship of the goddess, so witchcraft. A great deal of effort is going into luring teachers into the New Age perspective. What prominent New Age author Marilyn Ferguson calls personal transformation. Ferguson points out that tens of thousands of classroom teachers, educational consultants, and psychologists, counselors, administrators, research, and faculty members in colleges of education have been among the millions engaged in personal transformation. She boasts that of the Aquarian conspirators surveyed, more were involved in education than in any other single category of work. Transformation, by the way, literally means forming over or reconstructing. Another term for it might be conversion. Ferguson is quite correct when she points out that a gifted teacher can infect generations with excitement about ideas, can launch careers, even revolutions. Personally, I find what these teachers are infecting our generations with to be profoundly disturbing. The truly compassionate teacher is increasingly being defined as the one who uses the innovative techniques in the classroom. Those who refuse to go along with the program will eventually find themselves phased out. As the NEA has pointed out, teachers who conform to the traditional institutional mode are out of place. They might find fulfillments of tap dance instructors or guards in the maximum security prisons, or proprietors of reducing salons, or agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But they damage teaching children and themselves by staying in the classroom. The transpersonal connection. Modern education has always been closely tied to psychology. Trends set by psychologists invariably find their way into schools. Psychology is indeed a funny thing. Certified neurotics, Freud and occultist Jung sit around and formulate totally unprovable theories about man and his unconsciousness, the source of his problems and how to solve them. Then, admittedly, with great brilliance and authority, they present their speculations as vital scientific fact, and sure enough, almost everyone believes them. Until that is, someone else comes up with a different theory, which is then in turn adopted and venerated as scientific fact. First, Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, told us that a man is programmed by the accidents of biology and by the first 5 years of his life. Buried deep in his unconscious mind are all the repressed horrors of the moral dogmas that his parents imposed on him, which must by force control his life, psychic determinism. And unless he spends a good part of his life in psychoanalysis, he will never be set free from all the ghastly effects of botched potty training, repressed sexuality, and fear of death. This theory didn't cure Freud's own deep-seated neurosis, of course, but lots of very intelligent people nevertheless assumed that it would work on theirs. According to Thomas Bradford Roberts, Freudian psychology benefited education by pointing out that the role of emotions and unconscious in human development and learning. His psychoanalytic approach is known as the first force, psychology. Meanwhile, G.C. Jung, 1875 to 1961, one-time heir apparent of Freud, and no sex and death don't have all that much to do with it, man is basically good. And the unconscious is not just the mind's sunken sewage dump. Jung called this part of the personal unconsciousness beyond the personal unconsciousness. He speculated is a universal and inherited source of all knowledge and wisdom, the vast repository of the consciousness of the entire universe. What man needs to do is learn to tap into this collective unconsciousness, which lies at the heart of all religious and mystical experiences. Jung came from a deeply occultic background and had numerous spirit guides, among them an ancient Gnostic named Philemon. Philemon, who appeared to Jung as a wise old man with a long white beard and horns of a bull and the wings of a kingfisher, gave him all kinds of insults concerning the collective unconsciousness and other mysteries, which should serve to give us some sort of insight as to the source of Jung's theories. Jung wasn't as popular as Freud for many years. It seems that the idea of spirit guides and the collective unconsciousness freaked out a lot of psychiatrists. This is changing today. Then, in the 1950s to mid-60s, the behaviorists ruled supreme. Their programs of behavior modification in the form of psychological testing and values clarification, for example, are still very much in use in the schools today. Their best known exponent is B.F. Skinner, who took Freud one further and said, in essence, that man is nothing but a machine to be controlled and programmed by the rat mazes. Man has no choice. He is beyond freedom and dignity, and for all intents and purposes, beyond humanity. Psychologists worked at one over as long as they could, but something kept nagging at a few of them. Deep down, some of these great thinkers had an inkling that something very like a soul and maybe even a spirit was down in there somewhere, that God-shaped vacuum, although most of them certainly didn't call it that. In them rebelled at the thought of being a mere machine or just a sophisticated, super bright, overqualified and trainable monkey. So when Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, etc., proposed that man was autonomous and had infinite human potential, and that through focusing on himself and his feelings and his experience, he himself could become self-actualized, i.e. completely fulfilled or fully human. A lot of people went for it, so developed what was called the cult of self-worship or the human potential movement, the fourth force. With that foundation, the development of the fourth force in psychology was inevitable. Psychology hooked up with Eastern mysticism and the occult and became transpersonal. Maslow, in his later writings, included self-transcendence as the final peak of experience of self-actualization. He realized that a lot of those who had self-actualized will think that those who went on to transcend themselves had flipped their lids, but he nevertheless believed that it was an important and valid stage in man's evolution. I should say that I consider humanistic third force psychology to be transitional, a preparation for still higher force psychology, transpersonal, transhuman, centered in the cosmos rather than human needs and interests, going beyond humanness, identity, self-actualization, and the like. Transpersonal psychology is firmly rooted in humanistic psychology, and its emphasis on self and experience. But it goes a step further by focusing on personal transformation and transcendence. This is the experience of becoming one with all reality, as essential to man's education, evolution, very survival on the planet. It's what the New Age is all about. Transpersonal psychology is both philosophically very old and psychology very new. It is an old in the sense of many of the topics it investigates have intrigued humans for thousands of years. Altered states of consciousness, such as meditation and dreams. Man's impulse toward higher states being such as peak experience, self transcendence, and spiritual growth, and psychic phenomena, including parapsychology. Transpersonal psychology is studying their psychological aspects scientifically rather than relegating them to the realms of religion, mysticism, or the occult. It will lead to new educational understandings and practices, says Thomas Bradford Roberts. He couldn't have been more correct. Many educators have assumed that since science and psychology have undertaken to officially investigate the occult, it must therefore be real. And if it is real, then it is valid. And if it is valid, then it's good. So they mentally award occultism the good housekeeping seal of approval and proceed to introduce it into their classrooms under the cover of latest scientific and educational research. Marilyn Ferguson heralds the arrival of the transpersonal education, also known as integrative, holistic, or conscious education, as the emergent paradigm, which, unlike most educational reform in the past, is embedded in sound science, systems theory, and understanding of the integration of mind and body, knowledge of the two major modes of consciousness and how they interact. The potential of altered and expanded states of consciousness, she calls it, education's middle way, because it promotes friendly environments for hard tasks, celebrates the individual and society freedom and responsibility, uniqueness and interdependence, mystery and clarity, tradition and innovation. It is complementary, paradoxical, and dynamic. So she neglected to mention that it is also religious to the core, disguised as religion. Among themselves, psychologists openly admit to religious underpinnings of transpersonal psychology. In the classroom, however, its religious nature is usually disguised, glossed over, and even deliberately lied about. As we will see, in order to ensure its acceptance by parents, students and others might conceivably protest the use of religious indoctrination in the classroom. The purpose of transpersonal education is to present ancient occult techniques to students in order to open them up to the experience of self transcendence. What is that experience? It is the experience of enlightenment, of Eastern mysticism, the ecstatic experience of unity with ultimate reality that produces, often in a burst of blinding light, the realization that all is one, one is all, therefore everything is God, including you. It's enough to make Freud roll over in his grave. Here, the man who founded psychoanalysis says anyone who even believed in God was borderline insane. And now you've got a good number of his colleagues out there saying they are God. All good and well. In this free country of ours, they are still entitled to the delusion of their choice. What they and the educators who follow their lead should not be entitled to, however, is the outrage of smuggling their thoroughly religious psychology of becoming into our public schools in the name of sound science, self-esteem, and educational progress. And yet that's exactly what's happening. Not only that, but your tax dollars are paying for it. Transpersonal, so new age educators, are feverishly developing and testing curricula which they hope will prove acceptable to school districts around the country. The new curricula are, to be sure, being used designed to meet some very real needs. After all, they can't show up one morning and announce to the school board that they are intended to convert the entire campus into spiritual new age occult training centre. However, if they talk about brain research and scientific techniques to develop creativity and enhance the learning capacity of children, and if they can present activities to help children manage stress, solve problems, improve their self-esteem, thereby supposedly reducing crime, vandalism, drug abuse, and teen pregnancies, then the vast majority of schools would welcome them with open arms and many already have. Tempus Fugit. As far back as 1947, the high priestess of the New Age movement, Alice Bailey, wrote a book entitled Education in the New Age, which tells us that enlightenment is the major goal of education. Actually, the book was channeled through her by a demon who calls himself the Tibetian. Is it Dijwal Kul, or DK for short? The entire book is a blueprint and clarion call for the occult transformation, a euphemism for progressive demonization of schools and teachers, and her occult influence is considerably more pervasive in our classrooms than many people would suspect. It should come as no surprise that it's presented under the dignified garb of psychology. For example, Dr. Roberto Assagioli, 1888 to 1979, well-known Italian psychiatrist and developer of psychosynthesis, a comprehensive psychology that sees as its goal helping one strengthen contact with the self, our true nature, is credited as a major influence in transpersonal education through the development of activities for training children's imagination for the primary goal of self-development. Assagioli has argued that the guided use of imagination is a powerful tool for personal change. Progressive New Age educators Jack Canfield, Paul Klimek inform us that the theoretical model that we have found to be most useful in providing guidance for New Age approaches to education is derived from the work of Roberto Assagioli. Since his material is becoming increasingly popular in our schools, thanks to the influx of transpersonal education, it is of interest to know something of Dr. Assagioli's background and perspective. That clue is to be found in Alice Bailey's book, written over a period of years before her death in 1949, entitled The Unfinished Autobiography. It was there in Ascona, Italy, for the first time that we met Dr. Robert Assagioli, who had been our representative in Italy for several years, and our contact with him and many years of work with him constitute one of the outstanding happy factors in our lives. He was at one time a leading brain specialist in Rome, and when we first knew him, was regarded as an outstanding European psychologist. Dr. Assagioli was unquestionably intimately acquainted with Bailey's occult teachings, and he acted as her interpreter during her lectures in Italy. He was as concerned as Alice Bailey about researching as many children as possible with the New Age doctrine and techniques laid down by the Master DK. And he admonished at least one of his many disciples, a Northern California public elementary school teacher named Eva Fugit, to take it back to the children. So in the event of fulfillment of that commission, Eva Fugit eventually wrote a book called He Hit Me Back First, creative visualization activities for parenting and teaching to help her pupils contact what she calls the wise part within themselves. One enthusiastic New Age reviewer of her book observed, several decades ago, the Tibetan teacher DK gave us, through Alice Bailey, an important book on education in the New Age. It's most encouraging to see that now some teachers are applying those New Age educational principles in the most practical way in their teaching of children right in our public schools. The review, written by a man who was a Methodist minister for over 50 years, goes on to praise Eva Fugit as an outstanding example of this. The book, which has sold thousands of copies, already carries enthusiastic endorsements on its back cover from Jean Houston, Marilyn Ferguson, and Beverly Galline. Caution, change agents at work. Many of the teachers who are using occultic practice in their classrooms are undoubtedly doing so in ignorance. I'm convinced that the majority of them do not realise the source of the implications of what they're exposing the children to. Those who have developed the programs and who set the policies and trends, however, are in a different category. There is a clear and abundant evidence from their own writings that they know exactly what they're doing and why they are doing it. A growing number of their teachers are indeed very deliberately acting as change agents among the children. In an excellent book entitled Change Agents in the School, Barbara Morris defines a change agent as a person, organization, or institution that changes or helps to change beliefs, values, attitudes, or behavior of people without their knowledge or consent, to replace them with new beliefs and behaviors that will render the child susceptible to manipulation, coercion, control, and corruption for the rest of his life. Change agents have been at it in schools for a long time now. In recent years, however, change agents are gathering around the country to discuss the best methods available to them for smuggling occult techniques and philosophies into the classroom. Their goal, as stated by one teacher at a recent New Age seminar I attended, to help the children get in touch with their divinity. These things are crucial to our evolution. At last, a refreshingly honest, if unexpected, public admission of the true purpose behind exposing school children to the occult. I'm keeping an eye, guys. I've got buns rising for dinner. So I'm making sure that they're not going too far. I might have to slip off and just sort it. But my kitchen's actually a bonsai. Right. The seminar just referred to, so transformation, like it or not. The seminar just referred to took place in the weekend of June 19 to the 21st in 1987. The conference was entitled Through Crisis to Transformation and was sponsored by a new age group that now calls itself Unity and Diversity World Organization. Unity and Diversity is a coordinating network of hundreds of educational, scientific, religious, cultural, philosophic, esoteric, and occultic organizations from around the world dedicated to promoting the new age. The organization, originally founded by Leland Stewart in 1973, is committed to evolution of the United Nations into a world government, changing human nature for the new age and the emergence of the new universal man. Unity and Diversity has always harboured a special interest in education, and printed programme for the portion of the seminar dedicated to education featured lectures with such titles as Personal Transformation Through Education, Practical Applications in Today's Educational Establishments, Stress Management is Elementary, in which the speaker shared his personal experiences in biofeedback, training in a classroom setting, and social transformation through education, which featured, among others, Maria Manetta, a teacher at a local public high school. It was Ms. Manetta's lecture that captured my interest. It was billed this way: Parapsychology in Traditional Education. Maria Manetta will share her extensive experience in integrating various studies of parapsychology into a public high school curriculum. Open discussion will follow. Miss Manetta, an unassuming, down-to-earth woman, was introduced as a teacher who was doing a wonderful work within the framework of the current system. She described herself as the kid of the 60s. I guess you could say I was into the whole hippie thing. She has been teaching for some 20 years now, she said, and somewhere down the line realised that teachers have an incredible potential for revolution, that she is always careful in her civil obedience not to get arrested for a felony. She has had to be patient in her work. 15 years ago, she wanted to teach a course in non-violence, but because of the Vietnam situation, she was met with great opposition from the administration. Now, however, with the dreadful interracial violence between the Latino and white kids in her district, the administration was desperate for anything to help deal with the situation. She proposed what was in essence exactly the same course she had wanted to teach years before. It was a perfect platform for introducing her pacifist political views. She begins in speakers, ex-druggies, ex-felons, maybe a priest, to tell the kids about violence in, is it Nicaragua and El Salvador, etc. And this priest tells them, hey, if you guys join the armed forces, they're going to be sending you down to one of these places. You're going to be killing Catholics, Latinos, just like you, maybe even one of your relatives. Her goal, little by little, those kids are going to be out protesting our involvement in those countries. Ms. Manetta teaches a lot of different classes at her school: history, which she hates, health classes, and psychology, her favourite. She found that calling her class psychology was the perfect vehicle for bringing in some really exciting material, which she first learned about when she was at UCLA years ago. Miss Manetta was referred us to a folder which she had handed out to us at the beginning of her talk. I pulled out a copy of the flyer which she said she had posted around the school advertising her class, which is an elective. Psychology, a course about you, proclaimed the bold black letters across the top of the page. This class is real and it's about risk. Expand your mind, develop your spirit, explore your soul, touch your power, release your love, Create your life experience as you want it to be. Affirm yourself. You are invaluable. The rest of the flyer was covered with questions such as what's happening with you, what scares you, what do you think of yourself. The questions on the back of the flyer were even more intriguing. Parapsychology, one step beyond. What do you think it's like to die? How do you view the death experience? What psychic, strange, unexplainable experience have you had and perhaps never before revealed to anyone? How close have you gotten to another person, ESP, so extrasensory perception, and with yourself, intuition, inner voice? Have you ever left your body, so astral projection? Have you seen, heard, felt another from the spirit world, so a ghost? Miss Minetta said the kids really love the class and get a lot out of it. She spices it up by bringing in special speakers, occultists who are experts in their field, and always instructs those speakers to be sure to give the kids an experience with these things, not just to lecture them. She even included their names and phone numbers for us in the material she gave us. We do some pretty amazing things, continued Miss Minetta. Psychic healing, shamanism, crystals, witchcraft, hold ceremonies and stuff. Creative visualization, Progoff intensive journal keeping, meditation in class, either guided or open, and then they write about it. We do much work around self affirmation. We burn candles, hold a full moon ceremony once a month. On Valentine's Day, we hold a love relationship ceremony. We hold readings. Sometimes the kids bring things in, they really enjoy it. Sorry about the bird, guys, it's so noisy. In her closing statements, Miss Minetta put it all into perspective for us. I must have a divine light around me because I've had no flack from anyone. I've never had anything but positive feedback from the parents. One time, though, I was conducting a spring equinox celebration for the kids. I had the altar set up, flowers and candles were lit on the altar, and the principal walked in. Fortunately, he was a new principal and was thrilled with what we were doing. The focus was self affirmations. I was lucky. I have to walk a fine line on the religious issue. Some might say I've crossed it. Wake up, crazies. Educators like these have long depended on the ignorance and apathy of the crazies, the fundamentalist Christians, to give them the time and space needed to bring about the transformation of our children. Tragically, for our children and our country, that dependence has, for the most part, been well rewarded. Most of us haven't got a clue about what's going on out there, despite the fact that it's been going on for years now. In March of 1982, the US Department of Education held several hearings around the country on the proposed regulations for the protection of pupils' right amendments. These hearings were attended by hundreds of parents who testified concerning the subjection of their children to such practices as yoga, transcendental meditation, hypnosis, guided imagery, and visualization sessions, parapsychology, sensitivity training, psychiatric exercises, and other practices designed to change the thinking, values, beliefs, and behavior of the children. All in the name of education, of course. Phyllis Schlafly edited the more than 13,000 pages of testimony into a book entitled Child Abuse in the Classroom. If you have not read this book yet, I suggest you do so. The whole purpose of the transpersonal technique is to develop the spiritual side of the child. And given the current trends in educational philosophy and literature, any teacher serious about following the program will be fully equipped to convert your child into a proper little transpersonal Hindu occultist, as educator and author Gay Hendricks tells us. As teachers, we want our students to appreciate the full range of human experience, the transpersonal realm, although it goes far beyond what is usually considered traditional in education, is something for which most of us feel deep yearning. We want to experience completion, wholeness, union, divinity, to feel what is sacred within us and around us. Mr. Hendricks is, of course, welcome to experience whatever divinity he may choose in his personal life, and it's certainly understandable why he would want to share exciting occult religious experiences with the children in his care. Nevertheless, in a country where Christian teachers are banned from mentioning the name of Jesus Christ in their classrooms on pain of dismissal, where an 8-year-old girl can find herself in court for handing out Christmas cards to her classmates that actually dare to acknowledge that Jesus has something to do with Christmas, one finds the raw hypocrisy of transpersonal education more than a little difficult to swallow. And that is the end of chapter 4, guys. 3. Chapter 4 is gifted, talented, and other hazards. I'll drop that, I'll get that in a minute. And if you've not noticed the language that the occult use, it's also elongated, and I think it's just to confuse people, to make it sound like they're selling you something, but really they're selling you nothing. And you can see the effect that these teachings have on kids. I mean, I've never known a generation of young people so lost. When I look at them, I just think they're just doing nothing. They are just out there creating havoc for some TikTok trend. It's just like, wow, like they can't even think for themselves. They just follow the hype of whatever's going on in the situation. And guard your children with everything that you have. Protect them. Show them and bring them up in the ways of the Lord. Because kids need that now more than ever. This world, the things they've got available to them at their fingertips is not normal. We are not built to take on all of this. So yes, guys, so that's it. That is the end of that. I will be back soon with another reading, Lord willing, later on this week. Thank you all for watching, guys, and I will be back in the next video.